So I'm here with Elliot Henderson, and Elliot is a farmer, but this is going to be a little bit different of an episode. This is going to be a lot like Tony Reed and Nick McCormick when we just sat in the shop and tore agriculture apart. So I think we call that 3 Gen X farmers talking around farming. You're right on the edge of being a Gen X.
Yeah, I think so.
You're
83 when I was born, so yeah.
So I was born in 78, you were born in 83, so we'll put you in, you know. If you are a millennial, you're not the millennial, the juice box generation.
I don't think so. No.
All right. So you're a farmer. I'm a farmer. We're both smaller farmers.
Yep.
Probably.
First generation guy. I mean, I grew up on a farm, but I mean, I have my own operation. It's kind of similar to you.
Yep. And you do everything else to farm.
That's what it seems like. I've lived to farm, not farm to live.
Right. You're like a Harley guy. Like, we should get the shirts like Harley guys, where it's like live to ride, ride to live. We're just doing this farm.
That's all we're doing is farming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it got me questioning my sanity most days now.
Right. I always say if I had to put half as much effort into any other business that I did into going farming, I would be Bezos better look out. Because, you know, but we both agree there's some real problems in agriculture.
Yeah.
And we think those problems are going to get worse if we don't start.
I think so. You know, I want to put this out there. You know, I serve on several boards and some ag associations. So, you know, anything that we talk about here today they're my own personal opinions and my own beliefs, not representative of any group that I may be a part of. So I just forewarn everybody, like, this is just me talking here. If you know what I represent and the things I do, this is just me.
And I just put my opinion out, and if people don't like it, so be it. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. And I'm a co-host on Rush Hour Ag. So
we recorded.
Yeah, we recorded some episodes today, so there'll be some good stuff out, and you'll probably hear some of that soon, if not before this.
Yeah. But we really think the system is broken, and I think it comes down to we were better, if I could just narrow it down to one thing, we were better for rural America when we had more farms.
I like to say, you know, America was better, farming was better when, you know, everybody lived on 160 and the kids went to the one-room schoolhouse. You know, we ain't been to the moon since we got off these 160s and kids out of the schoolhouses. So to me, it seems pretty obvious, like, that was a much better way of society. You know, we should be going back to that, not getting away from it.
Well, and we say that I'll ask guys this question, and it's always the same answer. It's like, okay, so farm today with auto steer and you know, GPS, whatever you want, all the technology we got today, right?
Sure.
Would you take that or sit on a 2-cylinder and have 160 acres with some cattle, some pigs, and your wife stays home and raises the kids and you make a living on that?
I know the right answer. My emotions, though, of being a totally indoctrinated masher of the button all my life, I'm probably still going to want to mash the button. But yeah, like the way you're talking about living in that lifestyle and, you know, being at home in the dinner room for dinner at night and the kids are all around, like, man, I'm guilty of living probably a life that I don't think I should be living with that lifestyle. Like, I'm out of the house before the kids are up, and there's a lot of nights I ain't home until they've already been put in bed. And it's just like, what are we doing here? This is not healthy.
They're only young for a little while. I see this all the time. I got 2 young twins that came as a surprise when I was 42. And, well, you must be 42 right now, right? Now, imagine having twins now.
It could happen.
But I say that they have a different dad than my oldest ones.
Sure. I've got 5, and I can see that from my oldest to my youngest. Like, even in that range, it's different.
My oldest daughter remembers dad just give her hell, balls to the wall all the time, and it's very different than, like with the twins, I just went, because I always said I had more time than money. And then you get older and you realize you don't have either to speak of. And I was like, my time became more valuable. I'd rather I'm okay with an older pickup and spending more time with the kids, than it was when I was younger. I was like, well, yeah, I got to have this, I got to have that. What's the next thing? I don't care.
Right. I see myself going that way too.
Yeah.
Like it's sure, do I want things that are reliable and are going to get the job done? But like you said, you don't care about those things as much anymore.
I remember the last brand new pickup I bought. I was driving it home from the dealership because the dealer had called me and he's like, you want to trade pickups? And I was like, I tell you what, you find me one, blah, 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 And I drove it home and it hit me and I was like, well, that was dumb because I'm driving home a pickup and it was more of a hassle to go up to the cities and trade pickups. And I go, what are you doing? This is silliness. Like you weren't even excited to go because you're like, well, God, now I got to switch all this stuff and I got to. I'm like, well, that is one of the dumbest investments you could make. And then I went, yeah, something's wrong. And I'm like, you're killing yourself for something that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And that was probably 10 years ago. And I'm like, wow, there's better ways. There's better ways to do it. And yeah, and that kind of changed a lot of my thinking. But my overall view of agriculture changed a lot after our twins were born, especially the one with special needs with autism. But prior to that, I was like, well, I guess I shut the door. I'm the generation that shuts the door on agriculture. We got it. We got to see the change, but let's face it. Hey, you couldn't start a Chevrolet dealership either.
Well, you talk maybe, but like this agriculture thing, I'm not a big farmer, but the farms I have are people that I did chores for when I was growing up, or I, cut their oats, or, I did their pig chores when they were out of town. Those are the relationships that I made as a teenager. That into my adulthood, those relationships continue to develop, and then there was something that came from that. And it's not a lot. I'm not getting wealthy doing that, but I have a lifestyle, and they want to see me do well. My kids can't go do that today. The hog barn, the hogs are owned by JBS down the road. There's not a dairy basically in the county. The workers now that are helping these big farming operations are they're immigrant labor. My kid can't go in there and earn some type of a relationship with the operators of these farms. So it's like that you can't replicate what has been done for generations before. So when you say closing the door on it, like, man, I do feel like that.
Yeah, and I had kind of went, well, I guess so be it. Like, you can't start a John Deere dealership these days. That's pretty much sewed up, right?
Yeah, sure, you're right. But could you start a Mahindra? Or if we get more laxed on these restrictions with foreign tractors, why can't the next guy do the BYD tractor or whatever the names of tractors coming from China are? Like, I think through change of policy, we can bring opportunity back. But today's policy, it's like walling everybody off.
Yeah,
from
100%.
Getting into dealerships for tractors or renting or owning farm ground. Like, we have just become so restrictive and preventing the next generation. And I keep thinking about a lot of the stuff that Scott Galloway talks about with like $1.4 trillion a year get transferred from the working class to the retiring class. Like, I don't see the foot coming off the gas pedal of that anytime soon until we change policy.
Yeah, and
that's Social Security I'm talking about,
right?
Specifically,
these farms and this consolidation in these farms is 100% taking away that traditional farm. Like farms have gotten. I always said farms have been getting bigger since the beginning of time, right? Since the first farm, they've gotten bigger.
Sure.
That's normal. But how in the hell did we get from here to here in 20 years? Like, it went from 20 years ago, you could drive around our area, and there were still lots of small livestock-based farms that somebody made a full-time living on. They might own 160 acres and still made a living on that farm. We just catapulted.
Well, I think like my grandparents, in 1950, whatever, after World War II, and my grandma and grandpa moved up to Buchanan County. They bought the 160, and the people that were on it moved to town.
Yeah.
That does not happen today.
No,
It's
because
a retirement program of cash rent and income from cash rent plus Social Security or some investments. But right now we have policy that penalizes people to sell their assets. That didn't exist in 1950 something. So they could liquidate that and live off of the earnings.
yeah, and that drove the asset values up. That affected the asset values.
I think at that time, I think it stabilized the asset values more. I mean, I don't think you saw a huge increase in the value of farmland from like 47 to 67.
No.
It was pretty stable, I'd say.
Yeah, but that when we went away from that, so there was a time I remember guys would retire and buy a house in town, and a house in town was worth say half or a third of what a farm.
Yeah, $20,000 or $30,000 or something.
Right. So you'd sell your farm, and about a third of that money went towards buying your house. Today in our town, the average house is worth
Quarter of the farm? Yeah.
5%.
Yeah, it's inverse basically. Yeah.
Right. It has gone way too far one way, and that's putting a barrier on entry into farming. And I was, for the longest time, I guess I was kind of like, well, it is what it is. I had the attitude of like, I worked really hard to go on my own. I guess they'll have to figure it out. But you realize as hard as it was for me, a generation earlier had it easier. The generation before them had it easier yet. When we talk about opportunity, not the physical work necessarily,
yeah,
but the opportunity.
But some of this physical work that existed then doesn't exist today. So people stay doing it longer too, right? Like,
yeah.
That's another thing that's exacerbated this problem is that you don't have people, like when the folks sold my grandparents' place to them, they were physically couldn't do it anymore.
Right.
There was no button to mash and just turn it around at the end of the field. They're done.
And you couldn't just make a phone call and somebody would do your farming for you.
Right. Yeah.
And today,
because they already had their hands full with the 240 that they were running or whatever, and however many dairy cows they had and hogs that needed chored.
Well, I say all the time, I never understood it. So our feed mill in town, before they became part of a co-op, there were two co-ops at one point in town, but the one feed mill would do custom spraying with like a pickup truck sprayer.
Sure, yeah, I can remember those days when that's all that existed was pickup truck sprayers.
And they might have a couple of, a pickup truck sprayer, and then maybe they ended up getting like a spray coupe or something like that.
Yep.
And then Roundup hit, in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. And then the Rogator, the Ag Chem Rogator came, and I'll never understand for the life of me that Roundup, the early days of Roundup, I mean, it was lights out. One pass of Roundup, your crops were good for the rest of the year, right? Mm-hmm. So you had these farmers prior to that, there wasn't that much custom spraying because these old dairy farmers had a 300-gallon pull-type sprayer behind a B John Deere, Super C International, something like that, Why, when we went to one single product that just did everything, did all these guys go, no, I don't spray anymore? And now you go up to the co-op up there and they've got, 7 very large self-propelled brand new sprayers all the time. And it's like, how did we go from, it's the exact opposite. Like, it was easier to spray Roundup than it was all these other products that used to take, atrazine and oil and Prowl and
I had never thought about it like that, but I guess it did get so easy that and cheap. I'll spend my time doing these other things, so that converted you to this new system. But now it's kind of come full circle back again, and
you've got these older farmers that they're out of debt, right? So they got out of debt, and they're like, well, I can hire these guys to do it. Even if I could spray it for 20% of what it would take to do, I'm just going to hire them because I need the write-off anyway.
Well, kid yourselves. This stuff that was happening in the 90s is kind of the age we're at now today. And we've already talked about it just since we started talking here that we're making decisions now to not do some things that we used to do.
Right.
Those guys did the same thing.
Yep. But they're continuing that on further than it was. Like, there were no 80-year-old guys farming.
Totally.
years ago.
Yep.
I shot a retirement auction for a guy that was 88 years old this year. Like, physically, that wasn't possible to farm years ago when you were like that. And now you've got 80-year-olds competing with these young guys that want to get in, and they physically can't.
I said something the other day there about I really think we should end farm program subsidies eligibility for people that are eligible for Social Security.
Yeah.
Once you're eligible for Social Security, you're no longer eligible for subsidy programs.
Well, and I say all the time, like with the farm size, the point of the farm programs was to keep people in rural America and keep, that was the whole point. Keep people on the land. It was keep people on the land.
Yeah.
So why would we be encouraging farms to, number one, get real big off of these programs and limit and consolidate a lot, and then keep older people in it longer, when we should be encouraging you need young people in this?
Well, I look at this even like on an economic standpoint for like the state of Iowa, for instance. We are totally upside down in our thinking. If we want the old people to stay on this land and then give it to their kids who are not in Iowa, we should come up with a program that incentivizes them to transition that land to the next operator so that they can start building wealth and equity on that land that they're living on. Because right now what happens is that you're the old guy with land and you die. Well, the kids get it. They don't live here. And then they liquidate it. And then they spend that money somewhere else.
Yeah.
If you had a policy that today incentivized people to transition this land while they're alive, they would then have an influx of cash. I don't care. Let them have step up while they're alive. They will spend that money while they're alive. Mm-hmm. And guess where they'll spend it? Where they live.
Right.
But right now we've got a program and a policy that incentivizes people to die with it, give it to people that don't live here, and then they spend the money somewhere else. It's asinine. It is backwards. It makes no sense.
Absentee land ownership is a poison on rural America because, like you said, if the old guy lived in the farmhouse and took his rent check, he still spends it in town. He deposits it at the bank. He does all that.
Yep.
When it's mailed to an absentee landowner, that income leaves the area completely.
Yep.
And it wouldn't be so bad if, so be it, it's taxed similar to any other investment. But in a lot of cases, ag isn't taxed the same, number one. And then it's kind of like there's no, the rent income that farmer's getting is 100% affected by the farm programs.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're financing this money to leave the area.
Well, we're subsidizing. It's rent support. It's land value support. These dollars aren't going into the pockets of the producers anymore, the farmers.
No,
they're not adding value to themselves with these payments. And that's the other thing I like to say. Every time the government comes out with a payment for me, if it's a $1 they're giving me, I got 10 people there standing with their hand out. So not only did I not make $1, I lost 9.
Right. It is driving these values up. It's propping up the values, and just like we said with the land rent earlier, land rent versus the value of the land, the return on investment on that rent is decreasing because we've treated this farmland as it's become like gold.
Store of wealth, It's a place to store.
You buy gold. Everybody talks about, I made money on gold. Well, did you sell it? Well, no. Gold prices are up, and I have this. You didn't make it. That's what we're doing farmland, but farmland pays you a dividend back in the form of rent, and that is such a barrier on these guys to this. Which a friend of mine. That's one thing we forgot to talk about on the podcast. But a friend of mine has a theory on this, and it's a great idea. You're not eligible for the farm programs, crop insurance, or anything.
Yep.
If it's cash rent.
I thought about that. I can get on board with that, but I think there has to be some limits to it too, because won't that just make the guys who have large land base they own get bigger without some type of limits on that? That'll just snowball.
Like
those guys will just continue to get bigger and bigger.
But I think it kicks some of the investors out of the
I
farmland market.
agree, yeah, and it incentivizes people to say, hey,
Purchase farmland.
I don't want to own this land because it's not going to be supported by
Right.
these policies. I totally see that part of it. I do worry a little bit about it though, where it's like, all right, I'm the guy that has 10,000 acres and it's all bought and paid for. What's stopped me from buying the next 10,000 acres? I got an advantage. I'm a preferred class of person now that pays, you know, that's eligible for these programs.
But he's already that way. Face it, if it's for sale, you own 10,000 acres free and clear, those guys are just going to keep buying anyways. What stops them now?
The investors are stopping them because they're buying it.
Yeah.
Whoever has, it's the golden rule, right? Whoever has the gold rules.
But are the investors, it's one more thing that's competition. Because at some point, when we take the investors out of it, right? Farmland is going to be somewhat tied to production.
But you've got to limit, you've also then at the same time that you're going to do that, you've got to limit these risk reduction policies.
Oh, 100%. But if you tie it to the production, the farmland value should go down and the appreciation should probably get more in line with inflation versus this whole other thing that it's become.
I think so, because at some point, what's your appetite to own another acre if you're not having a return on it?
So if an 80 comes up for sale 20 miles from your house, and you have the cash,
right,
in today's environment, you might buy that 80, right?
Yeah, sure.
Because if you're not going to farm it, you'll cash rent it, right?
Sure. That's the model we live in today. Yep.
Because you're buying it for $12,000 a day.
Yep. Whether you're the farmer or the guy that just wants a portfolio of land, absolutely. Yep. That's what it is. That's what exists today.
Sure. In a year, that $12,000 is $12,500, right? Sure. So you're like, it went up that much. This is a good spot to put my money. Are you buying that land? You as a farmer now, if that land is going to basically go up to, say it's $12,000 a day. Next year it's $12,008, right? Like it doesn't really appreciate. It's tied more to inflation, the actual inflation versus this. Look at the gold price. Gold has tripled in a few years' time. That is not keeping up with inflation. That has become a completely different thing.
Yep.
And that's what's happened to this farmland. It's risen so quickly that it's not tied to farmland. So, and you as a farmer are going to go, if I got to drive all the way over there to farm it, I'm not driving 20 miles or 25 miles to farm an 80. You're going to pay a lot for the 80 across the road because it's efficient for you to do. It's close to home. You're like, yeah, I see a value in that. Where you're like, I could stick this money for that 80 that's 25 miles away into the stock market or something else.
Right.
Let's keep that a speculatory investment versus the farmland, that's a matter of national security. It wouldn't be so bad, except the land is what keeps rural America alive, and we're allowing speculation in that. And that's terrible.
Speculation. We're allowing extraction too.
Yeah.
This land does produce wealth. I mean, a crop of corn at $4. 20 years ago, people were just be happier than hell if corn was at $4. If you don't have the mortgage obligation or the payment on the land, the taxes are still relatively low on land comparative to what it produces. It's just that these other industries, whether it's fertilizer, seed, equipment, and now we have the speculators in land that are just extracting all the profit out of everything. So the farmer has no margin anymore.
Nope.
And we've created a society now too where everybody just wants to secure that next parcel, whether they don't own it or not. They're finding investors to buy the thing.
Yep.
And to me, this is like such a toxic thing that happens inside agriculture. Like, people aren't satisfied knowing that their neighbor is going to be able to buy something. They want to make sure it gets gobbled up, and they're happy just to be the tenant on it as long as somebody else doesn't get to own it.
Well, and we've bred this into farmers at this point where it's like if you're not getting bigger,
Yeah.
you're going backwards. And it's big, 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 and the quality slides. Your H2A operator is not going to do the same care that your dad did to that 160 acres that he farmed close to the home when the neighbors were going to drive by and judge him by the way he cut his hay and how straight his rows were. We know the quality of operating goes down. These bigger operations. So why are we incentivizing this?
I think we need to stop. I think it's not good. I mean, I look at these large, and they're large. I call them large. They're 30,000, 50,000, whatever they are, size operations. And rather than somebody that grew up in that community pick up that 1,000 acres, it doesn't get let go. Somebody just gets another South African to
Right.
cover those acres. And it's like, I think we'd be better off if, you know, the 22-year-old or whatever that's been running the sprayer at the co-op for the last 3 years gets an opportunity to farm that 1,000 acres as opposed to, you know, the 50,000 acre picking it up.
What do you think about 50,000 acres? You're talking about 100 or five. Well, it'd be 500 100-acre farms,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So
Yeah.
that 100 acres of tillable ground. So there's your 160, because your 160 was never all tillable. You still had pasture. You had
I'm
a
good
wood
with
lot.
that. Yeah, it's easy
you know.
math.
So there's 500 100-acre farms that took away at say 60, 70 years ago. That was 500 Farm All M's, A John Deere's, 500 pickup trucks.
Yep.
Or, you know, and now you've got, you know, 10 machines, one guy that's doing business with one dealership.
I can't believe that this is better.
It
It doesn't make sense to me. The math ain't there that this is better for our local economies.
It's not. And
to say that these kids don't want to do the work, I think is
such a lie.
It's a lie. It's a total lie. They just can't afford. The barrier to enter is too high. Wages have not kept up with inflation. You know, we talked about this before, but I mean, I grew up in a time where you could run the maintainer at the secondary roads and buy a farm every couple of years.
yeah,
You know, I know guys from my hometown that have put together a couple thousand acres by working for the county.
right.
Or chipping and grinding at John Deere Foundry. Like, they amassed wealth. You cannot replicate that today.
No, and you can't offset, well, we had a tough year on the farm. I'm going to pick up some shifts.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's the other thing I think is better for our economy, or, you know, for our taxpayers, is that when a big operation fails, the only people that can step in and save it is the government.
Right.
When a small operation has a tough year, they can take a few bites of the elephant for a while and get the elephant gone. If you're big and you fail and you got to eat the elephant kills you.
Right.
But we won't let these guys die. We got to have subsidized crop insurance with no limits. We got to have direct payments. And I'll be honest with you, man, I'm really tired of making the dude across the street paying $500 an acre rent, X9 combine payment for him when I pay my taxes.
Right.
I'm tired of it.
I
And the Mormon church bidding this stuff up to $16,000 an acre and somebody local can't buy it. I'm tired of this.
that is a true abuse too.
I got 27,000 acres now in Buchanan County owned by people that do not live in the state of Iowa.
Yeah. And all that revenue leaves the area, and that's why small towns are dying.
We every year, I don't know, we can't keep a restaurant open in town unless it's like a Chinese restaurant or a Mexican restaurant.
Yeah.
Well, those folks are willing to work cheaper. It's what it is. You know.
Yeah.
They're family. They're gonna, just like farmers used to be. They figured out a way to get it done. Those families are doing the same thing we did. But I don't see that that's what's good for our communities.
No, it's long term. It's not, building anything, right? It's exploitation in a way.
It really is. I think that's what's happening. And
Yeah.
I want to see my local bank be successful, but these deposits aren't getting made on Main Street anymore.
No,
Not in my rural town.
no. And we made farming to the point that in these big operations, absolutely, bringing up banks. I mean, that's how does a small town bank finance an operation of that size? It's almost impossible. Where there was a time starting out. So like when I started out on my own, I had a good job in the cities, and I worked off the farm. And you're like, okay, I can buy some of these inputs. When my buddies were, buying new snowmobiles and going on trips and stuff like that, I was driving junk and making my first land payment and scraping to come up with some money to put in some crops. And you could do that because to put in an acre of corn in 1999 is very minimal compared to what it is today.
Yep.
Like you could put an acre of corn in for the cost of the land rent today, right? So there was a chance to start. The numbers are so big as a young farmer. You go to a bank and go, hey, I got a chance to run 40 acres. And they go, okay, what's that going to cost you? And you're like, I need a $50,000 operating note to run 40 acres.
So when I was growing up, I remember this, like the standard answer. I would ask my dad, as a tenant farmer, what do you expect to make an acre? You know what the answer was?
I don't know.
$100 an acre.
Yeah.
That was it. You can ask. I've surveyed guys my age that grew up on farms, and they asked their dad the same question that I did when I was, a kid. $100 an acre. It's $100 an acre. Everybody, you can be at the bar on a Saturday night and survey all the dudes your age, and their answer is $100 an acre. But we've gotten so far away from that in the last 20 years that, all these articles written in the big farm publications was, well, you got to rent more ground and make less money and make it up on volume. And it's like, what a travesty. Like it's not good.
No, and we're even Henry Ford. Well, Henry Ford was a genius in a lot of ways, but Henry Ford was smart enough to go, I can get these people to work cheap because compared to the other factories, I could pay them this.
He was paying people better than the other factories.
And that's what I mean. Yeah. He was smart enough to go, or I could pay these people really good, and they're going to buy a Ford car from me.
Sure.
And we haven't done that in agriculture. We look at the hired man kid. Does he have a winter home in Florida or a brand new pickup or no? No, that young guy can't. Yeah, you can't even like.
The wage thing though, like we did that ourselves by exporting all these jobs. I mean, manufacturing, we exported all that. So like, the demand for that labor ain't there. Like when Ford was trying to get the assembly line going, he had to get that people pulled away from somebody else. And today, I mean, there's just a surplus of. I don't know. I worry what's going to happen in the next 15 years. We're going to have a lot of useless eaters. They're going to have autonomy. What are people going to do? I don't know.
Well, and that's how foolish, and I think it's I don't think it's foolish. I think it's by design. It seems foolish as a species, not even just as an American, to eliminate the use of a human being. That's why you're starting to hear talk about standardized living.
Like UBI, Universal Basic Income.
Universal Basic Income.
Yeah, I've never been a fan for it, but when I look at the corruption that's happening and I look how, people can get food assistance with, no real accountability. Bring on the UBI. I don't know. Like, I'm tired of this stuff. I'm tired of watching other people.
I just worry though that once you have that, so we're going to have autonomy replace the operators. We're going to have AI to replace the semi-skilled white-collar worker, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So you're going to have a few that are in the trades that, but when they figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Making water run downhill, it seems complex, but if you can get a robot to take parts out of a machine, you can probably figure out how to.
They'll figure that out.
Or it'll just become, components that get put in. They'll figure it out. Absolutely.
But what we end up with then is, at that point, people are livestock, right?
Yeah.
Because.
Or are they nuisance animals?
That's the other thing, and I think the ruling class. So when you're doing that, and you take away the living of this, the purpose of these people. Number one, you take away somebody's
When they're no
So-
longer valuable to somebody.
Right, and you take away, so they have no meaning, no purpose. Number one, their self-worth goes, their morals then go, and then since someone is giving you an allowance, just like your parents gave you an allowance, if your parents are giving you $20 and then you went and broke the TV screwing around with your brother wrestling, they weren't giving you that $20 then.
Right.
So they're going to tell you, you can't have more kids. You only get to have this number.
Yeah, I think so.
And to me, that is incredibly scary. And then you end up with,
It's like 1984.
yeah,
It just sounds like
we're
George Orwell.
And the only real thing, the only way to generate wealth above and beyond your universal basic income is going to be those that hold assets, right?
I think so, or you're going to have a really nasty black market.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be whatever is valuable to people
Yep.
be traded.
So that, as human beings, is a scary thought. People need just because you can put a person, make a machine to do this job, if you can readily give a person a purpose to do that, you're better. Because look at the welfare states that we have. You look at communities where they built low income housing and put people on welfare, etc. It tends to be not to prop up these people while they get their feet under them. It tends to be generational.
Yeah, it becomes
then-
lifestyle.
Yeah, there is no industry in those areas.
But just like we've talked about with farming, like these farm payments, like the appetite to do that, I think will end. You start the compassion to be able to give people these incomes or these payments to go get their own food. When that gets consolidated into a few people making the decision to do that and not the majority, all of a sudden you stop feeding those people.
Yeah.
I think we've seen this. We left Europe a couple hundred years
Oh,
ago.
absolutely.
You have these noble estates, and you can't even go out and harvest a rabbit or a deer or a bird off of it. And it's like, oh, now we'll have robots that make sure nobody can do that on these lands owned by people. It sounds very, I don't know.
It's incredibly scary, and that's why I think we need to start looking at this as a bigger picture and going, all right, how do we fix this to keep people working, to spread the wealth? A farm was somewhat of a thing of, it was an asset, it was a lifestyle, it was a point of pride to the family that they had a family farm, but that it was attainable yet, though. You know what I mean? Like, you could do the same thing for your family.
Well, that's right. We kind of went the wrong way with like payment limitations. I think we need to bring, either you burn the whole thing down, get rid of everything, or you put some pretty serious limitations on payments. So that way, when autonomy does come, if I want to be eligible, I've got to live on that 160. And I might be going out and mashing the button to send the sprayer out to spray or the tractor to go around, but like I can't be on the beach in California doing it.
No. It's got to be owner-operators.
Geographically tied to it. I mean,
100%. There should be, and we can do all that. We've got GPS technology.
But like somehow I do think that this wealth will concentrate in the hands, these estates will concentrate into these families, and they just won't have to be here.
Right. And I fear going forward, because I always get that people say, well, you're a small farmer, you're just jealous or something.
Oh my gosh, all the time. Oh, you're envious, you're jealous. Yeah, I hear this on social media all the time when you make a comment about like how this isn't a good direction to go in. I don't know. I don't think it's envious. I don't think it's jealous. I think it's just, this isn't going to be good for my kids. This isn't good for the next generation if we keep doing this.
And those same guys that are making that comment don't realize that they're not bigger than what is happening. If this continues on this path, you're like, I remember them saying they're going to take the land from people someday, and I hear that comment a lot. They're going to take your land. And
Well,
it's
that's what these ideas that I talk about with, like, if you're no longer the farmer and you are just the retired person renting the land out, to me, you shouldn't be paying ag taxes. You're a commerce enterprise.
100%.
You're not farming that land anymore. Why are you benefiting from these low property taxes? So it's like, that's their argument. Oh, you're going to take my land from me? You're going to take it because you're going to make me pay more and I can't afford it anymore? Well, no, I'm trying to incentivize the opportunity you had for the next generation.
Then go farm it.
I think so.
If you don't like what's happening if you're going to take away your ag taxes, then farm it.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to farm it, then don't own it if it doesn't pay as an investment.
But I worry, like, okay, give me my way. All right, you're 85 years old and you're on the beach in California. Oh, I'm farming it. Look, I'm farming it on my.
Yeah.
And I worry about that. So I think we got to think ahead far enough that, like, we know we're aware of what's going to happen with technology, and we need to be progressive on implementing policy and be able to move as things change, because really, current policy is 30 years old in farming right now. I mean, 1996 kind of was the last serious
freedom to farm, which ended up a complete joke, because the whole point of freedom to farm was so that we wouldn't have all these payments.
I just learned that base acres used to update every year.
Oh, really?
Prior to 1996. And now it's like pulling teeth to get base acres to
update. Oh, gosh, yes.
But it was part of the program every year. They updated automatically. And you tell people, nobody remembers this, evidently. But maybe base acres weren't that important back then either. I don't know.
I don't think it was as big of a deal. But with the ARC PLC, it's become
exactly
huge. But the freedom to farm was take away these disaster payments because you have crop insurance. So now we end up with the freedom to farm and we end up with disaster payments. And that props up everything. So when the seed corn company goes, we're used to making this much money on a bag of seed, they tell the government, hey, you better give these farmers some, because otherwise the farmer goes, I can't afford your seed, so I'm going to go plant open pollinated. I'm going to,
Nobody's doing that today. That as a viable option, but like these subsidized crop insurance, for example. To me, it's like way too expansionist. Row crop.
Oh,
People are crying about the herd size of cattle in this country. I think you can directly correlate the pushing of subsidized crop insurance to be the reason why we've taken hooved acres out of production and put row crop on them. And row crop is an economic engine. I mean, when you had an acre or however many, maybe an acre had a quarter calf on it or whatever, a quarter cow on it. So it took 4 acres, whatever. You do the math. But like, you take an acre of row crop, well, you get a lot of fingers into the pie of that now. You got the seed guy, you got the chemical guy, you got the equipment manufacturer guy. I mean, you really ramp up an economic engine.
But if you look at it this way, so, whether it be around home, which we had plenty of dairy and plenty of hogs around us, but say you're in central Iowa, you were farrowing 60 sows and farming 200 acres.
You're talking about some really productive stuff here. I'm talking about like this stuff on the fringes, right?
Oh yeah, the fringe acres.
You take a fringe acre that would only run a quarter cow on it, and I'm just picking a number for round numbers. Took 4 acres to run one cow. I don't know.
Yep.
And that's all it would ever do, and it's done that for 100 years. And now tomorrow, you're going to put corn on it. Like, you have really pumped a lot of money into the economy doing that.
You have, and you propped up a value for land that was almost worthless.
Yeah.
At one point, and that's.
But now I look at like, oh, we got to have exports. We got to have grind. We got to have a place for all these bushels now. And it's like whack-a-mole, where we went from being able to use those acres. Well, now we've got this policy that expands these acres. Now we got to figure out what to do with this bushel over here. And it's just like whack-a-mole now. It's like we get rid of this bushel here in Iowa. Now we created 2 more over here. And then we're wondering why we ain't making no money in Illinois or Iowa. Because we promoted these policies that expanded row crops.
I say, if they announce tomorrow year-round mandatory E15 at all gas pumps,
Sure.
and we announce a trade agreement, the EU is going to buy all their needs from us, or a bigger one, or let's just say China says, you know what, we'll become your exclusive buyer. We will not buy from South America unless you guys can't provide. Within 2 years, there will be guys complaining about how this $10 corn, I can't make it on $10 corn.
100%. That's what's happened.
So we need to get to the actual fix fundamentally what's wrong, and I don't understand why we import food to this country. Like, farmers love to pride themselves as feeding the country, but nobody's eating their corn and soybeans anymore. Their livestock is,
Right.
to a certain extent, but that's only about 40% of the use is feed and residual in this country. So why are we trying to export to countries that hate us all of our excess production, and then importing food stuff, like take oats? Oats is just a go-to example.
I think it's a good example.
People eat oats.
The biggest oat sucking hole in the world, I think, is in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, but none of the oats that go there come from Iowa.
No. And we're importing oats from another country. And I know there's somebody that's going to make the comment. They're going to go, well, you can't grow as good oats as they can in Canada. And I say all the time, you didn't grow good corn in Canada or North Dakota 30, 40 years ago, but we developed the varieties.
So is that should we be through policy, if they want to throw money at problems, like throw money at oats then, and make guys grow better oats here? Everybody treats oats like a bastard crop.
Yeah, so
There
why?
ain't nobody trying to grow oats here to put test weight on them or increase yield. They're not doing it. It's too risky for one thing.
Well, we currently have a shortage of beef for demand in our country. So you would think with these disaster payments, these programs, we're going to incentivize beef production by forage, by having good payments on forage crops. There's no payment on alfalfa.
No.
Or clover, or any, so why?
I'd hate to see them do that. I would much rather just see them unwind these expansionist policies, but I fear what you're talking about. Probably the good idea fairy is going to beat somebody over the head with, competing with expansionist row crop, and then you just have this self-licking ice cream cone that just gets worse.
And it doesn't make any sense to me that we consolidate all this livestock production into such small areas. So take, for instance, a prime example would be Smithfield. We all know Smithfield's owned by the Chinese, right?
Sure.
Smithfield contracts out production, hog production, right? So you had a hog farmer that used to be independent, that farrowed, finished, sold his hogs in that community. So he bought his feedstuffs in town.
Yep.
He called the vet in town. He did everything there, and then the local livestock trucker trucked him, or he bought his pickup in town and the gooseneck trailer to haul those pigs in.
Yeah.
Now we have a guy that basically is just an employee that owns an asset that produces for a company that's shipping profits overseas, so that we don't know where the inputs are coming from. If you're a grower for them, it might come from 200 miles away. Who knows? You're pulling that out of the community, and you as the contract grower run the risk of what happens if they don't want to pay? What is your recourse? What if they say we're done with this contract and your barn sits?
Which is, it's happening, I think, more and more, especially when the markets are tight on these hogs. But yeah, the dude is stuck holding the bag here.
And the independent kept growing hogs.
Sure. But like what happened, was it like 98 or 99? Was really tough on these guys. And it just made guys not want to deal with that anymore.
Well, and it's the same thing that's happening in row crops. We're getting more payments more crop insurance is we've taken the risk out of it. So that's why guys went to the contract grower. They just went, this Smithfield goes to this guy and says, you know what, if you grew our pigs in your barn, we'll give you this much money on it, guaranteed for the next 5 years. And you look at it and go, well, it's cost me this much to have my buildings, but I'm going to get this much over this. Yeah, no brainer. I don't have to worry about it.
And Smithfield got a better hog to process and a better.
They're more consistent.
More consistent, yeah.
I don't know that I would go as far as to say probably not a better
Probably
hog.
not better for the consumer type hog. Anyway.
No, but
yeah.
just they could set the parameters on exactly what they want. It's like, okay, so we got this production time, so we're going to have pigs farrow here, 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 and here. You know,
yeah, where we ain't got to lay nobody off for this week because
yep.
It's everything's like you said.
We don't need a hot bid to get hogs to come in.
Right.
And if they, back in the day when they throw out a hot bid, it's like, oh, so now we're getting a bunch of 210 pounders in because these guys are like, holy smokes,
right.
Let's send this batch early. Or they had a poor bid, so guys kept the hogs back and they got heavier.
So like that don't even exist anymore. Like
there's very little I think it's 90-some% is basically, contract sort of hogs. Same as like used to be a big thing, boars. Like I remember going to the World Pork Expo as a kid, and all these different companies that were selling boars. Well, now it's all AI.
Sure.
And you know why it's AI? Well, they put sows in gestation crates. And whether you're an animal rights person or not, you're never ever going to convince me that a sow wants to go from a gestation crate to a farrowing crate and back, and that's all she does, versus the pigs years ago when there was pasture farrowing and stuff. Those pigs were free range, out on pasture doing whatever. I mean, we had neighbors. I don't know if you ever heard of this was a common thing years ago, way back years ago, when my neighbors were doing it 30 years ago. There wasn't much of this left. Have you ever heard of hogging off corn?
No.
So you'd have a field of corn, and you turn the pigs into it, and pigs don't waste anything.
Right.
Like cattle, they'll see a stock there, and they'll knock over I don't know how many of them to get to that one, right?
Sure.
Pigs aren't like that.
Yeah,
they don't
once
waste
it's on the
anything.
ground, they're getting it.
Yep, they're pretty smart, and so they would just take the corn as needed and eat it.
No, never heard of hogging off, I guess, ever.
It was kind of cool, like when our neighbors would do it. So they'd do that. They'd hog this corn off, and then they'd throw some soybean meal out there for them. You'd break open a bag of soybean meal, and they'd be out there, eating their corn out of the field. Well, then they'd get their soybean meal as needed. But all winter long, you'd be like, oh, those hogs, it must not be warm in those buildings or whatever. They'd like find snowdrifts and corn stalks, and they'd burrow in and they'd make themselves. Those were the happiest pigs.
Sure.
Running around. And what could be more efficient? There's no combine, no dryer, you just.
Well, it's like, are we getting to the point where the margins are so tight on doing this stuff? If you were to take out the payments, that people start doing the math on running hooves again?
I hope.
Maybe not here at $15,000 or $16,000 an acre ground, but you start getting down to like maybe where there's some $5,000 or $7,000 an acre ground. I mean, what's a cow now?
Oh, $5,000, and that scares me.
So you start running cows on in areas where you can run a cow per acre or acre and a quarter per cow. It probably starts making sense again. You don't need the $500,000 machinery bill.
But why can't you even, like when we started up a small beef herd again, I chopped a little corn silage this year. So talk about a nice way to feed cattle. So like for me, with the idea of having these cattle is, my land is too valuable to me to take, say, 20 acres. I'm going to seed down to a hayfield just to feed the cows.
Okay.
Like, because then you got to cut it, harvest it, 3 times, whatever, and take the risk on cutting it, etc. But I've got a few waterways. I got some tree lines. I seeded down some hay on the backside of my home farm, just along the tree lines. Nothing grows for 8 rows along the woods, right?
Yep.
Might as well put some hay there. We'll get at least 1 or 2 crops off of that. So I did that sort of stuff, and then I got cover crop after I take oats off that I can harvest for the cattle. So I got that. But that's not enough feed. But you have that cheap feed that isn't costing you anything. But then you throw in a little bit of corn silage, because 2 acres of corn silage is a lot of feed. That's
Right.
12 acres of hay, right?
Right.
So I can have cattle as part of my operation without dedicating the whole farm.
So is this, you get rid of the appetite for somebody else to want that 20 acres or 40 acres? Is this the next opportunity for the next generation to get in it?
Well, I think the best opportunity for young farmers is livestock, because look how many. Iowa is probably hogs, right?
Sure. Yeah.
How many farmers made a living on 160 acres with 40 sows?
Mortgage lifters, they called them forever.
Yep. So you could keep where that same guy on nothing but cash grain. There were guys 160 acres and 40 sows in the 80s, right?
Yep.
But that same guy doing cash grain was probably 300, 400 acres, right?
Right. To raise a family of the equal size or something. Yeah.
So why are we not doing more of that? Where look at the dairy, is obviously huge by us, and I've had guys talk about. So when I was a kid, there were all these small dairy farms. Every farm at one time was 160 acres, right? And it's been cut up and merged and gotten bigger or smaller from there. But all these 160s, all these quarters, they had a dairy barn on it, and the milk truck. All right, I would go from this farm to this farm to this farm, and I've had guys go, it's so inefficient. It's so much more efficient when we could take a semi to one farm, pick up a tanker load of milk, and I go, so yeah, you're right. It's more efficient that one truck can just pull in there and get that milk, right? Sounds great. The problem is the feed and the manure for that same giant operation that's filling. They're sending trucks all over hell, getting chopped feed. They're taking manure. Like there was the one big dairy by us ran out of space last winter, so they were hauling 40-some miles to another manure pit that had room.
Yeah, it's like they're saving nickels to spend dollars, and it's
tripping over a 20 to pick up a dime.
And I know like in India, what is there, 1 billion people or something in India? The biggest, I think, employment over there is, like a 2-head dairy herd. Like everybody's got 2 cows, and they milk their 2 cows, and they actually still carry the pail to the little community bulk tank, and then somebody comes and cleans that bulk tank up. Like they're still doing that in India in 2026, and we need a semi-trailer to haul our milk away. What are we doing here?
And then that same guy is going, well, if ICE raids us, what are we going to do? And it's like, and my problem with that is that this guy milking 5,000 cows, right? That's 150 cow dairies. And they always said 50 cow dairy was the peak of efficiency, because that one guy, one farmer took care of that. He did everything on that farm. It's like, wow, what could ever be more efficient than that? And they said, well, we got this idea.
Yeah, we're going to Henry Ford this thing.
Yeah, we're going to put thousands of cows in one spot, and then we're going to get immigrant labor to come in that works for pennies on the dollar.
You can pull the tits, you can haul the shit.
Yep.
You can put the feed out, and you're going to do the same job all day.
And then we'll get our suppliers, since we're the only, so now we've replaced 150 cow dairies. If you want to do business with us, you're going to have to bid for it. Where it was the 50 cow dairies, the guy that, sold the feed, the veterinarian, the guy, selling equipment, et cetera, that repaired the dairy equipment. Mm-hmm. He said, okay, I'll come out and work on your vacuum pump. I'll work on your bulk tank. This is my rate. Now they're like, I want to bid from all you guys. So the local guy in your community might not even get the business for that. And then he quits and isn't replaced because there isn't any other dairies left.
Right.
If you drive around, it's fascinating if you look in old magazines and they'll list like dealerships, John Deere dealerships. And it's like, oh, there was a John Deere dealer there? Yeah. There was a John Deere dealer there? There was a John Deere dealer there? Why isn't there? Because there was all these farms. That 150 cow dairy has been replaced by one 5,000 cow dairy.
I don't see that it's better.
It's not. It's not. It's not better for the community. It's not better for our country, but it's better for one or two people.
Well, it's not that hard. Minneapolis is in the news right now.
Yeah.
You drive through Atlanta, you drive through these big cities. There are a bunch of people that are doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I just can't help but think that if more of these people were back on the farm, you'd be teaching kids to think. I just think we'd have a better society.
People are better with a purpose.
Yeah.
You give people a purpose, they have a sense of value. You give somebody a check for nothing, and they don't. They feel no morals, no self-worth. Once you have no self-worth, you're like, I feel abandoned by God or somebody. Then their morals go away. Crime goes up.
Yeah, and then you create a culture where you see somebody get something that they didn't have before by stealing it. Now all of a sudden, that's okay for you to do the same thing, and then it just dominoes into generations of that type of behavior. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this here in my lifetime. I never would have thought I'd see it, but it's here now.
And
it's not very far away either from where I live.
no, and the scary part is, and this is, I know there's somebody out there that has big farmer attitude that's like, you guys just say that because you're not as good as me. You're just jealous, right?
It's gonna come. I know it is.
Well, yeah, you guys need to learn your history, because if you look what happened throughout time when the poor rises up against.
Well, I don't. Were you and I
upper
talking
class.
about like the Holodomor?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be the modern day kulak where I'm very wealthy in my older years and people are sick of not having anything. I don't want that to be happening. I don't want that. I want more people to be prosperous, not just me.
Yeah, because when you become that way, people will rise up. And
I mean, that's what's happening in New York City right now.
yeah, 100%.
The people are sick of it.
And what people don't understand is, you can say, well, I've got my guns, I've got it. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Great, that's fine. We're talking total apocalyptic situation. But before we get to the total apocalyptic situation,
You gotta sleep sometime.
you're also going to have, eventually the power of the farmer will disappear just from pure voting.
Yeah.
So we have a democracy.
Which we're there now. We're just hanging.
Yeah.
Luck is the only thing I think keeping us going right now. I don't think the support's there.
Our democracy could vote in a dictatorship.
A lot of people are claiming that we're already there.
I mean, we could theoretically, through our own choices as people, like you could say, well, no, people know we're farmers, we're taking care of this country, and say that all you want, but we're this much of the population, but yet this much of the population is all in the upper 1% of the wealth of this country.
Well, and Brazil has grown. They can produce more than they need to service China. Africa is going to grow. It's going to develop. They've got cheap labor there. The land is fertile. It's going to grow. People are going to want to go to wherever they can get the cheapest food. They're not going to be loyal, or they're not going to be obligated to buy more expensive food here domestically. And when you, like you say, if the majority of the population decides that's what they want to do, then that's what they're going to do.
Right. There's decisions will be made whether farmers want it or not, and for us to be trying to.
This conversation's already kind of happened within the last year with just beef.
Right.
Cattlemen's, beef producers, very upset that consumers want to import beef. Consumer wants cheap. They know it's good quality here.
Yeah.
They're willing to go somewhere else and get it too.
And to me, I think this idea that we're going to chase export markets. We import everything as much as we export in this country. So what are we doing getting on that merry-go-round? Aren't we better off to take care of our own needs?
Again,
we don't need to be a global.
I do think, though, that there is some there's some equation there or math that is being done that says the more we expand row crop, what do we produce in this country anymore and export? We ain't making TVs here. We're not exporting raspberries here. You know, we're exporting corn.
That's it. And
so
oil.
Does it make sense mathematically to subsidize this production so we can send it somewhere else and trade TVs or trade whatever? I don't know. Maybe it does, but it just don't feel right here to me.
It feels to me like I think we could be self-sustainable in our country without being part of the global economy. I think.
Yeah.
Look at the money that has been spent through the military-industrial complex.
I like to say, I wish I had a bumper sticker that said "Beware of the agricultural-industrial complex," because we don't have a cheap food policy in this country.
It's the biggest lie ever.
We have a cheap food manufacturer input policy.
Yeah. Well, what we did was we, in the idea of raising cheap food, we sold out rural America. We decimated rural America, leaving these people no other options to feed themselves but to buy the cheap, Kirkland, Walmart, whatever foods.
Yeah.
Because there is no local butcher, no. Do
you think there's another policy thing though? Like if we unwind some of this USDA stuff to where people can start doing that, it's 2026. We don't live in Upton Sinclair's The Jungle anymore. Like people can process this stuff, and the free market is in social media. People aren't going to get away with, doing things incorrect. I don't think they will. Making certain cuts of meats or.
I did that video the other day talking about how, what are we doing here? Like, we're, at this point, we're expanding in the worst economic times. Apparently we're growing our production, whether you believe the numbers or not, right? In the worst economic environment to do that. No other industry is like, you think John Deere's like, we can't make a dime on these combines right now. Let's make more combines.
No.
Deere goes, that's the last thing we're going to do. We're going to cut back, let supply catch up.
Yeah, we're only gonna make what is ordered.
Right. Yep. And we'll fix this. Where in agriculture we go, well, I guess if we do this foo-foo dust or whatever the newest product is, they said it's going to cost me $2 an acre, but I can get 36 back if I use this. So I'm going to make 36 cents on those $2 if I, and guys are like, better do it. It's tough times. We need all the production we can get.
But I do think, though, like with the times we live in, there are farmers out there that have no debt. They're printing money.
Oh, 100%. Like,
they're making money.
I was talking about that these payments, there's probably 20% of the farmers, if they don't get these payments, it's bad. Like it is lights out, end of the world.
Yeah,
right?
It's like what's going on in Nebraska right now. People aren't getting financed this next year.
Yep.
It's a real thing. I don't think it's so bad around here. You hear anything like that around here, Tanner? Not that I've heard of, You get another day like Monday, maybe, but.
Well, and I'd say there's probably 40% that are like me, like, we could use it, for sure.
Yeah.
I could use it. Like, we definitely, are going to use that money. Is it the end of the world? Is the bank going to say no more farming if you don't? No. But that'll help. But then you end up with at least 20% that is like, well, I don't know. We bought a new combine last year. I guess we could trade again, but hopper bottoms are only 2 years old. They're like, they get almost annoyed they get all panicky when these disaster payments get announced because they're like, well, what are we gonna do about tax planning?
Yeah,
what if we get
the
it
year's
before
coming around like 2 weeks in Christmas? I got Christmas.
Yeah, they're like, well, we need to know when it's coming so we can.
I have people in my mind that are popping up that I'm thinking about that you're talking about right now.
Like if you have to tax plan for your disaster payment, you don't need the money.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Like, that's the part that I.
But this country, I mean, I don't know. we're not comfortable picking winners and losers right now. We got to make sure everybody gets it.
100%. Well, like I had said earlier, why shouldn't it be like, that's why I never had a problem with anybody having food stamps or having a food shelf. I think that's great, wonderful. But when they went to EBT cards, I knew somebody that managed a convenience store, and they said that they're like, yeah, you wouldn't believe the pop, you name it, energy drinks that are bought.
When did that like became okay? Is that like a 10-year
My
thing?
mom does the grocery pickup. She goes in early and does the orders at Hy-Vee.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she said the same thing. She goes, it's amazing because you can apparently use EBT or whatever that is, SNAP on an
Yep.
order, an online order,
Sure.
and pick it up. She goes, it's just fascinating the shit I put in these people's cards.
Oh, sure.
And
She gets to watch the whole order.
And she can see how they're paying it.
Just junk.
and when you had food stamps and a food shelf, there was some shame. Like you went in the grocery store aisle, or when you went to the checkout and they seen you pulling out your food stamps, you felt a little shame, and you're like, you know what, I can't wait till we get things turned around and we can get off these food stamps. But now with the EBT card, they don't know if it's your debit card, your credit card, or your EBT
Right.
card.
That's what they fought for.
We've normalized it, and
It was embarrassing.
How long has this been this way? 10 years, 20 years?
I don't even know. It's been a while now, but it should be the same with the farm program payments. Like, I need that farm program payment. They're going to list it. You're going to have to apply for it, and then they're going to list it. They're going to put a little shame with it.
Yeah.
You know, that guy that gave me a hard time, I won't say his name because he's tried to be a nice guy now, but this summer.
Are we rolling again?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
yeah. Just a heads up. Yeah. So the guy that went after me, that was the giant Hall of Fame NTPA tractor puller, that went after me, kind of the whole, oh, you're just jealous and a bunch of, you don't get it. And I pointed out that the number one, he wasn't just the champion tractor puller, that he was the champion of receiving subsidies of his county. I pulled him up on Farm Database.
Did see that, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, they didn't like that. You know, well, there we go.
There's the shame that needs to be back into the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, and if we do this, if we start fixing these programs, yes, I think it's good. I think the reason for these disaster payments was so that we could keep the disaster payments in of themselves originally, like taking them back to the New Deal or something, were to keep farmers on the land, right? And
Sure.
because you could have your wealthy person that could sustain whatever disaster is thrown at them, and then they could buy these distressed farms and
Right.
grow. So the disaster payment themselves came from a good spot, but they ended up now they've become EBT cards. So there's no shame now in taking the farm subsidies, because we're like, well, we have to take them because everybody else is, and it's driving
The
up.
banker's budgeting for it. Everybody's,
Yep.
you know, it's
So-
just part of the yeah.
So now we're the EBT. So we're going through the checkout line with our Marlboro Light and a Red Bull in our hand, putting it on our EBT cards, and we're just like, well, whatever.
Yeah, buying $400 bag designer seed corn.
Right.
You know,
It's dumb.
it's dumb.
It needs to. We got to fix this thing, and people that are on farms should be the people that want to be on the farms, people that really want to farm, not just. It shouldn't be. If you're going to collect money this way, you should not be considered like upper class, or you know what I mean. If you saw I'm using quotes. I'm just, because you always talk about the welfare queen. If you saw a welfare queen driving a brand new Denali, people would melt their faces, right?
They would.
But yet, you go to we'll go to some winter seed corn meeting, and you pull in the parking lot, and it's nothing but new high countries, Duramax,
Yeah.
whatever, King Ranches.
Well, that's right. I don't think the public has in their mind that farmers are these stoic people.
No.
If people knew that they were worth $12 million and had $1 million of cash in the bank, that they probably wouldn't tolerate
No.
what's going on.
And it's unfortunate that there are young farmers, first-gen farms and stuff like that literally are not. They are not the wealthy ones.
No,
They
they're
are
not, and they're trying to get in and do this stuff, and they're heavily leveraged, but I do think they're also starting out. They're not starting out on third base. They're starting out swinging,
Right.
and
They need that.
they need good pitches, and they're getting thrown balls. These payments, sure, these direct payments, but then everybody else is getting walked into. I don't know. It's probably not the right analogy, but
Well, yeah, the direct payment is coming to the people that don't need it as much as it is to the people that do need it. It's just unfortunate then that it's supposed to bring up, yes,
But
it lifts up the guy that really needs it. It's just unfortunate that the water level then increased because they both. So he's drowning in the swimming pool, and they go, all right, we're going to pick you up 4 inches. By the way, we're adding water to the swimming pool.
well, that's what everybody likes to say. Oh, a rising tide raises all ships. Sure, but when you're stuck on the bottom in the mud,
Right.
you can't floating, dude. Like,
No.
that's what's happening in modern agriculture.
Right, 100%. And that's where we can talk like this is wonderful, and if it's wonderful, ag is perfect just the way it is, then explain to me why we had 3 disaster payments in 1 year.
I don't know, man. I'm really of the mind that we just should burn it all down and
Yeah.
get rid of all this crap. And
We got
if times, I don't, the distressed thing, like, man, maybe that'll come quicker than what I think. But it's like a small guy is going to be able to go work the job in town and, like I said, eat the
Yeah.
elephant. The dude that's farming 50,000 acres and has a bad year, he ain't refinancing.
no, and it's unfortunate that guy, when it
He
becomes
ain't going
a
to
problem,
be a Walmart greeter and pay the debt off,
no,
or chipping and grinding at John Deere for until fall comes. It ain't happening.
no, and when he goes down, he pulls a lot of other people with him.
Like local banks that have maybe 100 employees. Like, this happened in Michigan not that long ago,
right, yeah.
And that times weren't even that bad then.
No, and so then you had all kinds of this big giant farm goes down, and then the old retired couple that did quit farming their ground that need that for their rental income, they didn't get paid.
Right.
The bank didn't get paid, so they went under, taking people that weren't FDIC'd insured or past that level. There goes their stuff.
And I'm a farmer, so like, as a farmer, I don't like my tax dollars going to continue to propagate this behavior. I can't imagine, the guy working at Casey's paying his taxes, or the guy working at the foundry. I can't believe these people are okay with this.
I don't think they are. You got the clerk at Casey's that gets his check. I don't know what he makes, but just say 20% of his check is deducted, in taxes. And meanwhile, the guy runs in on his Bluetooth headset that's driving a new Duramax.
Oh, you're
It's
just
not
jealous.
only not,
You're
yeah.
just jealous. I mean, I already can hear it.
And that guy isn't even paying any taxes. He might
No.
pay some property taxes, but that's it. He isn't paying any income
Hey,
taxes.
he ain't paying property taxes. He's paying the rent check to the
Yeah.
guy that's paying the property taxes that don't live
Yeah.
here.
And the guy working at Casey's couldn't pay for that pickup in 10 years,
Right.
but yet he's paying more in taxes than this guy is.
That's what I see is happening.
And that's when people are going to go, oh, I've had enough.
I just don't think people are aware of this.
I think they are. I won't.
But don't you think, like, the modern person living in Cincinnati or Charlotte listens to this today and they're like, no way, these guys don't know what they're talking about.
No, I think the internet has changed that. Well, even we talked about that Arkansas video I was watching. Everybody wants to be, when they think of a farmer, they want to see American Gothic, right?
Sure. Yep.
Stand from the white farmhouse or the big red barn with some chickens and pigs and whatever. But that guy in Arkansas was driving around and pretty nice platinum Super Duty. You know what I mean? Like, so even some of the YouTube farmers, I know, and those guys are great guys. I'm not gonna knock any of them, but when you put that out there, now they're starting to group all farmers into that, and they see these guys trading pickups all the time. They see this equipment, and then, you know, there was a time when you could, you know, in the 80s, you were a city dweller and you've seen a guy driving a new 4450 around, right? You had no idea what a 4450 costs. The only way you ever find out is if you called a dealership, and most of the dealerships would be like, what do you want? But now that guy picks up his phone, punches in John Deere tractor, you can see the number right on it.
Right.
He's like, holy shit, that thing costs how much?
I'm going on a tangent here, going a different way, but like, I do like a gentleman had told me once before, like, why should I have to hide my prosperity? And it does seem like there's a little bit of that inside agriculture where, like, shame on you if you're not driving some rust bucket. You know, so it's like one side or the other. You know, it's like,
I think that went away. 30 years ago, I mean, I remember the neighbor bought a 1990 Chevy 3/4 ton with a 5-speed in it, and it was a Scottsdale, and it was the light duty 3/4 ton.
Okay.
So this was not a high-end pickup. It was a manual transmission. Scottsdale was a cloth seat. It wasn't the bare minimum like a Cheyenne, but it wasn't loaded up either. But I remember my grandpa saying, "Oh, look at the Cadillac," you know, because it wasn't this old, you know, 70s pickup that was rusted out and beat up.
Okay. You think that's gone? You think that, or you don't think that exists today?
No, there's none of that left because it's become normalized. Look, like I said, go to a seed corn meeting.
But like even you just talking now, you know, the dude in Arkansas, you know, he's got the high country or whatever, and it's like, I mean, guys are, and you know, I don't agree that it's envy or whatever that we're going to hear, but like I do think that it exists. I think I'm not going to try to say that you have to admit it, but I think you know that there is this aura that exists. Like we've got to keep some level of modesty or something. I don't know. I'm probably putting words in your mouth, and I don't mean to do that, but I do think that exists too, still today. That like you can't be too prosperous or you can't show your prosperity.
No,
you don't
think that
so?
went out the window. All you gotta do is go to the grain line, and I mean, I remember hauling grain when I was a teenager for a farmer into the river, and the professional truckers had like pretty nice trucks.
Yep.
They would haul grain, and the farmers would be rolling in with an old cab over and a throw tarp trailer or something, you know, like it was. And now it's the exact opposite. There's no margin in hauling grain, so the professional grain hauler is driving a truck that's worth, you know, $5,000, right? Old Freightliner FLD, and the farmers, I mean, farmers never bought a new semi because they didn't put enough miles on a semi to ever pay for a new one. And now I see brand new ordered Peterbilt day cabs with. Yeah. And when they order a hopper
digital
bottom,
displays in them, I see them.
They got the 2 rows with stainless steel corners and a stainless steel back. That went out like, you go to these seed corn meetings in the winter. The guys that are there, now there's some part-time farmers that aren't going to make it because they're working their job, right? And those guys maybe aren't driving that new pickup. But I bet you go in there, 3/4 of the people there. I'm just saying not all of them, but 3/4 are going to be like new $70,000+ pickup trucks.
Right.
And yes, there's a few that don't, some old school guys, and sometimes people confuse them for being poor farmers, and sometimes that's just a guy that just always like, I buy land. That's what I do. Mm-hmm. You look in the plat book if you want to impress me.
And he's got billfold, you know.
Right.
You can't sit on anymore because it's full of $100 bills. Yeah.
There's some of that, but then there's also the part-time farmers. But the majority of the acres are getting farmed by the.
I don't see the guys in suspenders anymore.
No.
With the with the billfold they can't sit on anymore. I'm just thinking about that now. But when I was in my teens or 20s, they were everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of one old farmer that pinched pennies. This guy lived so cheap his entire life, did everything the hard way. I mean, like, well, let's cheaper to do it by hand than it is to buy a machine to do that. That kind of guy he had the first dime he ever made, and then he had the penny that was the interest he made the first year on it,
Right.
That guy there, though, BTO ended up running the farm.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to him. I'd known him since I was a kid. And I'm like, talking to him, and he had a 40. This is, somebody's going to figure out who I'm talking about now. Oh, screw it.
You can edit this part out, but at least
Well,
you'll
I
say
don't
it.
care. I don't care. But he had a 40 that was close to home where I grew up, and it was close to some land that I used to run, and I was ready to buy the next small piece of ground, and I'd known this farmer. When he quit milking cows and stuff, like I bought his leftover feed, and he'd known me since I was a kid. His brother grew up right next door, and done everything the hard way. And I asked him about that 40, and he said, I'd have to ask the big farmer that had everything. You had to ask him before. He's like, I'd have to offer it to him.
Not the guy that bought the feed that you were gonna throw.
No.
Not the guy that.
And I don't have a problem with the big farmer they sold
Right.
to, but it's the fact these are two farmers on opposite ends of the spectrum. Like when he was farming, like he ran these old David Brown tractors, because David Brown would run on a gallon an hour, and never had anything remotely. His entire line of equipment could have been purchased by one of these guys. This guy's beater tractor, but he had to look out for him. And I'm just like, we've lost that generation, and now we've got a generation that's almost idolizing the BTO or say the YouTube farmers that.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm not knocking those guys,
No,
but
I think of conversations I've had with guys that are maybe farming, 200 acres, and they're using 50-year-old equipment, and yeah, they really do idolize like the YouTube stuff. They
Yeah.
really do.
So it's like, I think that went away. I don't think there is the shame in that. And once that shame goes away, eventually the guy working at Casey's is going to go, wait a minute, why is 20% of my paycheck going, and this guy doesn't even pay taxes, and he's driving a pickup that I couldn't afford? And
But like, I think most everybody's probably assuming that these guys, they just worked harder than me. Maybe that's around here, I guess, that people think that way. But
well, it's been indoctrinated into these.
I'll let you in.
okay,
You don't have to go home.
Oh, well,
I gotta go take the kids to church.
but you can't stay here.
I
yeah.
gotta stay.
All right.
We don't have to
You stay
leave,
as
but
long
you
as you
can't.
want.
Stay
No,
here.
actually, we should cut it off. This one went long enough, and I don't know if we're gonna solve it. You guys tell us if you.
End it.
No. If you guys tell us
No, it's
if you want another
Thanks,
episode.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah,
Hey,
thank
man,
you.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, you too.